Hello?
Good morning, Mr. Goodman. Rock Hudson here.
Mr. Hudson, I've been expecting your call. How are you today?
Doing good. We've got some interesting information for you today, Jason, in regards to international shipping. Of course, we've been looking into this quite extensively, and especially when we brought to the attention the ship of interest, the Memphis Maersk.
Of course.
And so we continue to dig in on this. And so something I want to bring to your attention, and this is a good example, Jason, of how the truth is getting suppressed by the powers that be.
Uh-huh.
I have an article here that actually comes out of England. The article is titled "Security Fears Over Cargo Ships Going Dark Near Terrorist Zones."
Mm-hmm.
The article was written by Fiona Hamilton, and it was written for the Times UK.
Okay.
Now, this article was written in March of 2017, and in our opinion, was terribly suppressed from the world. Obviously, it went out on with this paper, but nobody picked up on it.
Right.
So, in this article, and the other thing too is that I want the audience to know that we give credit where credit is due. Mm-hmm. This isn't about us and us being able to come out and say, oh, by the way, our spies have discovered. I mean,
right.
The world of intelligence doesn't work like that. You take in information from all kinds of different sources, and then you dig into the information, which we are doing that right now. We are really digging into this article, the information here, and we have been vetting the information, and so far, it's hitting true.
I see it here.
So,
Ghost ships in European waters spark terror fears.
I beg your pardon?
Is that the title of the article? Ghost ships in European waters spark terror fears?
No, it's security fears over cargo ships going dark.
Huh. So there's another article, March 10th, from Fiona Hamilton, the crime and security editor.
Well, there you go. Maybe somehow the title of this article has gotten changed, and that's why it hasn't was difficult to find. I don't know.
Huh.
What I do know is if you type in, Jason, www.thetimes.co.uk,
yep,
and then type in security fears over cargo ships going dark near terror zones. And I'll be interested to know if it's the same article.
Yeah, I do see that. So, well, it looks slightly different, although it's got the same date. We'll look into that further, but sorry, please continue.
Oh, that's interesting. If Crowdsource the Truth can reach out to Fiona Hamilton, I would suggest that you do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so what she says is that this large cargo ship near the island of the Hebrides goes there and then parks amongst all these tiny fishing boats. And even though this huge cargo ship looks out of place, obviously, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's sitting there, and it turns off its AIS system. And the AIS system is basically the beacon locator of the ship.
Uh-huh.
So she gets to looking into this thing, and in this particular case, this particular ship, I said a cargo ship, but it's a large ship, and it's actually flying a flag of Cyprus, and evidently this thing is a large ship to actually store huge quantities of fish.
Okay.
For 3 years, it had operated primarily between Northern Europe and West Africa. But all of a sudden, in mid-January, it deviated from its normal routes. It went and visited Ukraine, and and it did that before it entered the Mediterranean, back into the Mediterranean. So then the ship sails towards Gibraltar, and then there were 12 days of questionable maneuvers where this ship seems to drift around off course, and it deactivated its AIS tracking system several times during this period.
It's very strange and deliberate behavior, it seems.
Nothing is known then. There's no record of the crew's specific activities, nor the intent. It can be established by anybody. In this case, it's a organization called Windwards, which is an Israeli-based analyst group. And so this ship goes dark for 28 hours.
Sorry, Mr. Hudson, and Windwards, they're the ones providing the data about the ALS turning off, or what's their role?
Yes, they're a group of analysts that are tracking this type of thing. Yeah.
I see, okay.
And so then for 28 hours inside the area of the port of Awan, which is in Algeria, this thing goes dark. Its AIS system is off, and there's no way to know what the heck is going on. And for your audience, the port of Awan near in Algeria is a region that is notorious for the tracking of arms, migrants, and narcotics.
It's interesting.
So according to Ami Daniel, who is the Windward chief executive, he says, this is not only a risk of collision.
Right.
It doesn't only present but it's also indicative of illegal activity. That a ship would turn its AIS system on, then it would turn its AIS system off, and then it moves from a location to another location without the AIS. And that AIS system also notifies other ships of where you're at.
Right.
And this is an area that's busy with ship traffic. So he says that he is concerned by the vessel's next movements because it stopped off on Islay, which is the southernmost island of the Inner Hebrides. It's stopped there for 11 hours. There were no major ports in the area and no incentive for it to be there. And so then that raises the prospect that it may have been involved in illicit exchanges, such as drugs or weapons by smaller ships coming out, like fishing vessels, for example. And this thing has its AIS off. It's parked, floating, drifting around. These other vessels come up, and then they're possibly loading or unloading illegal material.
Right.
So then about the same time, but more than 2,500 nautical miles away, there's an oil tanker that sailed from Libya to Greece, but not before making two unusual stops in which it drifted for 7 hours one time and 15 hours another time.
Now, of course, coming from Libya, that could be ISIS-controlled oil, or no?
Yes. Yes. And so that raises the possibility that it was meeting another ship, again, for an illicit exchange.
Wow.
Another ship leaving the Libyan port of Tobruk last month, they say, stopped for 2 days off of a tiny tourist resort in Crete, which raised suspicions of the smuggling of people.
Human trafficking, right?
So it's a great article that I think that Crowdsource, the Truth audience, would and should read. And Windward goes on. It compiled data for the Times in this paper in England. And this data revealed that in January and February alone in 2017, these ships disappeared from view, turning off their AIS tracking system 2,850 times.
Wow.
Just in European waters.
And I presume that's something that under normal operation should never occur.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, that some of that may have been technical difficulties. But 2,850 times, that's not all technical.
Seems like a lot. Yeah.
Correct. And so then, according to the Windward analysts, they go on to say that there were more than 300 vessels that entered Europe that had an invalid International Maritime Organization number. That is the equivalent, by the way, of a car registration.
Right.
And more than 60% of the ships also used what they call flags of convenience, which is a legal mechanism which conceals the ship's home country.
Huh.
Now, if you remember, we had brought up to you something that we were finding very difficult to prove, but it appeared, and we had several sources that were telling us that the Clinton Foundation had its own small fleet of ships.
Right. And there were also some independent people in the crowdsource community that had raised that possibility.
And then we were able to prove, if I remember correctly, that there were 3 occasions when these ships were purposely grounded and were then disassembled in India.
Basically scuttling the ships.
Correct. Now, they weren't huge cargo vessels. They were a smaller cargo vessel. But over and over again, we began receiving information, again from several sources, including an intelligence source, that said the Clinton Foundation has ships, that they are operating under multiple flags. In many cases, the ships are not named, which means that they were utilizing an illegal International Maritime Organization number. They had an invalid number, and that these ships were suspected of illegal arms, transporting people and narcotics.
I mean, I can't say I'm surprised.
Right. So, are we able to absolutely prove that? No. I want your audience to know right now that we cannot absolutely prove it.
Okay.
But there are strong indicators to say that it's correct. And you got to admit, Clintons and their organization are pretty smart, because when we caught wind of this and started pursuing it, they started getting rid of the ships.
Right. Yeah. Well, they're very good at destroying evidence, of course.
But that does not mean that they got rid of all of them. In many cases, we think that those ships, we think that the Foundation is still operating, possibly still operating ships. They have simply changed their maritime numbers. They are flying flags of convenience, and they are now flying under the radar because they don't have a name.
I mean, that's literally a false flag.
Correct. Here's some things that people might find interesting. How many vessels are there in European waters? Well, this is astounding.
Yeah.
This is astounding because more than 2.2 million ships went into 28 main ports of call in the EU alone in 2015.
It's a staggering number.
It is. It is. But here's a question that we don't understand. If a ship is not properly registered, and if a ship is not flying the flag of its origin,
right?
Why would any port let them in without conducting strong security checks?
Yeah. Well, the only explanation I can come up with is money.
But that's what's happening. And then we take a look at the ports, and what did we say? That the security is so lax.
Yeah.
At ports around the world, including at certain ports in the United States, it is so lax that they are running the cargo containers through security as quickly as one every 30 seconds.
Right, we've discussed that previously.
And then when we took a look at the containers that they found, that they actually discovered illegal contraband, whether it's narcotics, whether it's human trafficking, whether it's whatever it is, was only 3 containers out of 10,000.
Right. Well, obviously it's an inadequate screening process.
Correct. So, now we have some strong data that we feel then ties in not only with the Memphis Maersk, but now we have this mounting evidence that's saying, hey, there's a serious problem with international shipping and with cargo containers and with where they're coming into the various ports. In the United States, I'm sorry, but for us to turn our ports over or to sign agreements for a foreign entity to control these ports was a huge national security breach. I'm sorry. I'm just going to come out and say that.
I agree with that. Do you feel that this has any correlation with the recent accidents with the USS John McCain and the USS Fitzgerald?
Well, again, giving credit where credit is due, I want to steer everybody to the YouTube site, Florida Maquis.
Right.
So you just simply go to YouTube, type in Florida, and then type in Maquis, Maquis.
Yeah.
And Florida Maquis has their latest post says security fears over cargo ships going dark in terror zones. And you have to take a look at that.
Yep, I see it.
So here we are. We've got these cargo ships out there. Not only did we have a reason to believe that the Fitzgerald and the McCain might have been hit with a microwave pulse weapon, but now Florida Maquis has also stated that there's a possibility that they are being purposely rammed, and in a YouTube post that they did prior to this one, they actually showed an example of it. So what I want you and your audience to know is that in the world of intelligence, you look at all possibilities. Us coming out and saying, hey, we think there's a possibility of a microwave weapon being used, it doesn't discount the possibility of that.
Yeah.
We know for a fact that the Chinese have developed it. I sent you pictures of it.
Yep.
We also know that Russia has developed one now. By the way, I haven't sent you pictures on that because I don't have any, but I'm working on it. But at the same time, now we've got evidence saying that this is being done on purpose, that that some of these cargo vessels are actually practicing a maneuver to get up extremely close to a naval vessel and ram it on purpose.
Well, it certainly looks like that's what's happening in the video from 8/23.
Yep, but here's another thing, and this is something that you knew that we knew about. We reported it to you, but we did not bring it out to Crowdsource the Truth audience because we have to be very careful as to the intelligence that we provide out of concern and fear that we may give a terrorist organization an idea, right?
Yeah, sure.
So we got to be careful of that. It would be irresponsible of us to reveal information that shouldn't be revealed. But of concern of ours, which I had mentioned before in our closed-door back room, right, was our concern over Fukushima and the weaponized waste that is being stored, thousands of tons of this, that are being stored near Fukushima with, in our opinion, a lack of security control.
Well, yeah, and probably, I mean, even a lack of cleanup control. Every time I ever hear anything about Fukushima, they're still trying to get out in front of it.
Well, and you know that I reported too, or that we had discussed the possibility that Japan was reaching an agreement with Daiichi to dump 700,000 tons of that into the Pacific Ocean.
Wow.
Yeah. We were very concerned about that. Some of us in the Hudson groups are very concerned about that because we don't want to see the planet destroyed, and we certainly don't want to see the Pacific Ocean destroyed.
Those are reasonable positions to take.
Well, what would be the ecological ramifications of dumping 700,000 tons of weaponized Fukushima waste into the Pacific Ocean? I mean, my God.
I can't imagine.
But that's what we're looking at. And then you have to ask yourself, is it possible that these terrorist organizations have been accessing the waste from Fukushima? So again, it ties in with the possibility that ISIS or Al-Qaeda or some terrorist organization or group talk about a dirty bomb. It's one thing to be
Right.
talking about depleted uranium or hospital waste, Jason, being used as a dirty bomb.
Right.
But but if you were to combine that with stolen weaponized Fukushima waste,
Right.
that's a different story.
Well, this all speaks to the clear and present danger that we saw back in June when the call was made to the Coast Guard to check the Maersk Memphis. And all of the people since then, including very recently, who have tried to characterize that as a bomb threat or a hoax of some kind, clearly don't understand what was going on that day.
Correct. So once again, what we are dealing with is a lax during the Obama years, and I'm just going to come out and say it, but in particular during the 8 years of the Obama administration, their irresponsibility when it came to the United States national security, the protection of you and the Crowdsource audience families was worse than lax. It was completely irresponsible, and I've got to be honest about it, we wonder if it wasn't done on purpose. How far does this treason go? We know for a fact, that the Awan brothers penetrated Congress. I've said this over and over again. We know that Debbie Wasserman Schultz had a strong relationship with Hillary Clinton. We know that the Clinton Foundation needs to be investigated on many different fronts. How deep does this go? Is it possible that during the Obama years, that mass treason has taken place against the American people?
I think so.
We are very concerned about it. And it is our opinion that Trump needs to take off the damn gloves, and he needs to get rid of Sessions, or he needs to tell Sessions, take off the damn gloves. And we are going to investigate, and we are going to do multiple investigations, and I don't care. We have to take a position. We do not care who is involved, who gets exposed. We do not care about the careers that end. We do not care when it comes to the security of our nation.
You know, just the other day, Mr. Hudson, I got a phone call from a grandmother in Alabama who felt that Jeff Sessions was an honorable man who, for reasons unknown to her and me, his hands were tied. He's not acting. And I mean, again, it's always, we don't really know. We've spoken about influence over people, and we've spoken about the fact that President Trump seems to be surrounded by neocons who aren't necessarily aligned with his agenda.
Jason, think of it like this. Let's say, for example, this conspiracy of treason has gone. Let's just look at it like this. Let's assume that there's a possibility that this conspiracy of treason has become so huge within the depths of the American government that it's almost big enough, and maybe was getting big enough, to where there could actually be a treasonous overthrow of the United States. If that's the case, it means that hundreds of people are involved. And when we consider the number of compromised congressmen and possibly senators that may have been blackmailed by the information that was stolen and taken off of their computers by the Awan brothers, it just makes you wonder. Then if you find out about it, then the question is, how much damage do we want to allow to occur and be known to the American people of the individuals that were caught up in this? Some of which participated willingly and therefore are traitors.
Yeah.
And some of which were caught up in it and succumbed to the blackmail.
Right.
And some which are just absolute victims. And it could be they don't know what way to go. They don't know what to do. How much do we expose this? How many people do we allow to go down the tubes on this? And you got to ask yourself, if they start making 50, 60, 80, 100 arrests in Congress, we couldn't even convene our government.
It's true. The whole thing would collapse. I think that's part of the concern. I think Lionel called it a cancer that's metastasized and, worked its way into every organ to the extent that, I hate to use the word inoperable, but
doesn't matter. You got to operate anyway.
Yeah.
And what we are saying is, Mr. President, regardless of the fallout that's going to come with this, for God's sakes, investigate, find the key players, and for God's sakes, at least begin prosecutions of them. The other stuff, the victims, etc., can be worked out behind the scenes with the intelligence community and the DOJ.
Right.
Now, I want the audience to know I am not insinuating that if an individual was criminally involved or treasonously involved in this, that they should get a pass. What I'm saying is that this is so big and so devastating that we've got to put our hats of logic on and say, hey, we need to handle this with some kid gloves.
Well, and there's got to be people in there who can come forward and share information. I mean, that's where your immunity and your pardons come into play. When someone who themselves is in jeopardy raises the courage to come forward and reveal information about the senior players, that's really what we need, right?
Correct. Immunity should not be given as a result of friendship because they're part of the game.
Or brother-in-law.
It should be given as a result of understanding the situation, of how they got caught up in it, and having at least some compassion and understanding.
But the person receiving the immunity has got to provide some evidence that gives results, I would think.
Exactly, and it gives results, and you can look at it from the standpoint. It doesn't look. I'm not saying that it should exempt them from what they did. They shouldn't have got caught up in it. The minute they found themselves being blackmailed, they should have come forward and said, "Look, I need help, FBI, because." And so, what do? Well, in the back rooms, when these people reveal what they know, the way I would give them immunity would be, one, that they reveal everything; two, that it's significant in getting the key players; and three, it would also come with an agreement. By the way, your career is done. You're going to resign, but we'll let you resign with as much dignity as we can. Or you're not going to run. You're not going to run for office come next election.
Right. But when we hear from people like Michael McMahon, who were within the FBI and tried to blow the whistle on corruption and just was basically shut out, ostracized, fired, I think that's got to be what is preventing people from coming forward, is that their fear that it won't do anything for them.
Well, that has been how it has been in the past. Whistleblower patriots of this nation have been mistreated for years, for decades. And if I had an opportunity to meet the president face to face, I would tell him, I would say, look, you need to create a whistleblower program that protects the whistleblower and remunerates them in a manner that, because their careers are going to most likely be over, it shouldn't be.
Yeah, to incentivize.
I would embrace the whistleblower. I would promote them.
This is what Michael McMahon said. We
have several national security breaches. One of which is with the Awan brothers. Another one is obviously our maritime cargo ships and ports.
Right.
The audience, several times I've noticed in the comments, have said, "What do we do? What do we do?" And I'm going to take a moment to tell them what to do.
Okay, great.
We have right now, you have over 14,000 subscribers. And typically between 5 and 10 to 12,000 people that actually watch a video post.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, that's actually a significant number. If each of those people would pick up the phone and take 15 minutes out of their day to call their congressmen and their senators and say, I believe that we have a spy ring in Congress called the Awan brothers, and we demand something to be done about it.
Right.
They don't have to be mean about it. They can be professional about it. But what they need to convey is, my vote is going to be determined by your actions. I am no longer a Republican. I am no longer a Democrat. Now, I've never discussed two-party politics or anything like that, but I'm just going to come out and tell the audience, I'm neither. I don't see myself as a Republican. I don't see myself as a Democrat. I don't see myself as an any party person. I will tell you what I am. I vote for the individual that I think has the most integrity and is actually going to go to Washington to do their job. And I believe that this whole two-party concept, the Democrats and Republicans, has been used against us as the American people to divide us. And to be quite frank about it, I am appalled and ashamed and disgusted with both the Republican Party and the Democrat Party, because I'm going to tell you what, when they're not in view of public opinion, they are in the back rooms laughing their asses off and dividing up the piles of cash between themselves, and they are buddies. I don't believe that either party has the best interest of the American people at heart. I don't. And until the day comes that Americans realize that the power of the vote is still viable, I believe, hopefully, and that they need to set aside party politics and they need to send a message to Washington. We are going to vote for the person that is going to do their job.
Yeah.
And until that happens, nothing is going to change.
Right.
For the Democrats to take the position that they're not going to work with the Republicans, who are they actually working against? They're working against the American people.
Right.
For Republicans to do the same thing, who are they working against? The American people. And for a government to play that game amongst themselves and fight amongst themselves and blame each other and nothing gets done, who's it not getting done for? It's not getting, people. Nothing is being done on behalf of the American people. Yeah. Are you kidding me? And you and I have been talking about a project. I'm not going to reveal it now, but you know what I'm saying because we've discussed this, and hopefully we're going to have a plan of action for people here very soon as to how we could truly change government. Yep. Right?
Yes.
So with that, Jason, I'll let you go. That's what we have for today. I highly encourage the people to take a look at this information. We have a clear and present danger on several fronts.
Yeah, I agree.
For God's sakes, folks, pick up the phone, call your congressmen, call your senators, call your newspapers, and demand, and start making demands. It can be done in a nice way, but I'm going to guarantee you, if Washington, D.C. receives 10,000 calls today,
that's going to make a difference.
Somebody's going to take notice.
Yeah, yeah. That's going to make a difference for sure.
15 minutes is all it takes, folks. 15 minutes. It's a very simple thing to do. If you want to make a change, make those calls. And with that, this is Rock out.
Have a good day, Mr. Hudson.
You too.